Good day and welcome, Move Fitness. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have a very special guest, and we are going to be talking about pregnancy, what to be eating and maybe exercising prior and during. I have Kat Bearfield with me, who's the Vice President of .Fit Nutritional Services, registered dietitian nutritionalist, certified personal trainer, friend, and mentor. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, it's my honor. You know, I always love talking to you guys. There's no secret that, Move Fitness is near and dear to my heart. So thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. You always bring us such a joyful, appreciative, gratitude, loving spirit, and we always love talking to you. It's just, we can get so much knowledge, a little bit of comic relief because you put that great spin on it with your fantastic personality. So again, this is going to be a lot of fun. I know we're speaking to a specific niche in our market, which is really, really valuable, not only to, for those of you who know me or don't, myself here in the future, a few of our other employees as well have, some questions for you in regards to, leading up to getting pregnant. What should we do? What should we avoid? And while we are as well. So if you don't mind, we'll kind of kick right into the questions. How's that sound?
Let's do it.
All right, Mama. All right. So my first question is, how should I be eating when attempting to get pregnant?
Okay. So the principles really in this, what's called the preconception period, is very similar to, just people are not trying to get pregnant, is you want a really nutrient dense diet, right? So you might want to know, what are the things that I should be eating more of, less of, things like that? Well, first of all, you got to start with, okay, am I eating a lot of minimally processed, colorful fruits and vegetables, right? We know that that's where most of the micronutrients are that our bodies rely on. And of course, micronutrients are vitamins and minerals, things that are essential to human health that aren't produced in the body. You have to get them from an outside source, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to have that. And then you want to have high quality protein sources, because you can imagine, you're going to be making another human being. Yeah. To make sure that you're getting high quality protein on a regular basis. So that as well. You don't want to take out fat. So a lot of your healthy fat sources are going to come from the foods that you're eating, whether it's, seafood and fish, which of course you want to incorporate that for the omega-3 fats, right? The vitamin D that's in there as well. So you just want to really, eat like the color of the rainbow, minimize your processed foods, a lot of healthy protein. You don't want to leave out any major food group, because if you leave out a major food group, what are you leaving out? You're leaving out micronutrients, right? I will say though, some might not know this, but alcohol is not a food group. So you are going to want to limit, right, alcohol intake, because obviously that can be detrimental to, the developing baby, etc.
Yeah. And I've heard and or read, kind of this process of changing, maybe your eating habits and drinking habits. And if anybody out there has some recreational habits, that should really at minimum start about 90 days from, kind of when everything sticks. I'll leave it at that. When everything sticks, and that it's happening, and again, correct me if I'm wrong or give me some more time or guidance, but does that sound about right?
That sounds about right. I don't know that there's any hard guidelines around, when to cut alcohol, XYZ, but just makes common sense that if you're going to try to conceive, then you're going to want to cut back on alcohol intake, right? You want to cut back in general, and then obviously eat as best as you can, getting all the micronutrients, etc. So, you're going to be making another baby, and that baby is going to be relying on your level of nourishment. So of course there's a heightened, sensitivity and a heightened urgency to getting all these micronutrients.
Yeah, great. Okay, good. Because that'll kind of lead me into my next question, which is, I'm reading that the period of time leading up to pregnancy is the most developmentally important time for the mother and the baby. So I've also read that organic fruits and vegetables are the best choice
Yeah.
to prepare your body for this period.
Mhm.
Is that true?
Well, I would say it's definitely important, but that's not to say that other stages of development aren't important throughout pregnancy, right?
Yeah.
But it's definitely true in terms of early development. So here's what we know about organic, right? First of all, just clearing some of the myths. Organic farming, right? It's a way they do farming versus conventional farming. They also use pesticides. Okay, so both types of farming are regulated by the USDA. And so I don't want people to think just because it's organic, they don't use pesticides. That's not the case. And what the USDA does is they will test the amount of pesticide residues that's left on fruits and vegetables to make sure that farmers are following the rules. So of course it doesn't expose lots of people to large amounts of pesticides. And so what studies have shown is that whether it's organic or conventionally raised fruits and vegetables, there are still pesticide residues on either one. The difference is in the type of pesticides used, but both are at very low, super low levels. Like there's not even close to a risk of toxicity in regards to normal fruit and vegetable intake, whether it's organic or not. So they're not more nutritious. They don't necessarily have fewer pesticides. And even if they did have a little less, nowhere near close to toxic levels. Here's what's interesting, Chancey. The average American consumes 2 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, maybe 3, right?
Yeah.
And if organic is going to make you not buy fruits and vegetables, that's the wrong mindset.
Yeah, for sure.
What we need to prioritize is, let me get as much fruits and vegetables as I possibly can, organic or not. Let me make sure that I wash them if I'm concerned about pesticides. Wash them thoroughly, right? You can even use a fruits and vegetable scrubber. They have those available. Yeah. And get a wide variety, whether it's fresh, frozen, or canned. So I just want people to eat more vegetables primarily, and of course, colorful fruits, because that's where all the micronutrients are.
Great. Well, yeah, I think that I had a few more follow-up questions on that, but you answered everything in regards to washing it and, is it worth the cost? And what it sounds like is whatever you're going to buy, if that all of a sudden means that because it's organic, you're going to buy and eat more, then go for it. And if you're already eating, like you said, all sorts of colors and plenty of fruits and vegetables that aren't organic, it's not at this moment, based on the research, it's not going to harm you or the baby anymore, whether it is or isn't.
Absolutely. Very well summarized.
Okay, well, let's kind of piggyback on that and get into protein. So I've read that many farmers are now regularly injecting their cows with hormones to get them to produce more milk and antibiotics to encourage growth. According to what I've read, both of these transfer to humans when we drink the milk, resulting in increased hormone levels in children. So they're developing faster than normal. So, that's kind of something that's out there right now saying, okay, don't do this because your basically child's going to turn into this big, huge corn-fed antibiotic, like milk drinking thing. So let's talk about that a little bit. So what do you think?
So same thing. So with antibiotics and hormones, the government does regulate that, right? And farmers are trying to raise animals and produce food in an economical manner. The more, high quality their food is, then of course the better off it's going to be. So they're not going to want to mess up their own food supply, right? So what are antibiotics used for in humans? They're used to treat illnesses. Well, they're also used to treat sick animals when animals get sick. So yes, they are used, but there's a mandatory withdrawal period where you cannot use it. And then it gets tested. The food supply gets tested to make sure there aren't, significant amounts of antibiotics in there. Like they only allow, a very, very little amount in the food supply. And all of those levels are highly scrutinized with a huge margin of safety. So a significant amount of antibiotics that are going to do any harm in your body aren't found in the food supply. And same thing with the hormones. You're not going to get, you know, testosterone filled
a
meats.
hulked out alien baby.
Right. Exactly. I mean, the food supply has probably never been safer in all of human history. Think about the 7.2 billion people on the planet and how, like, there's a lot of food waste and there's a lot of just food availability. It's just our food supply is super safe for the most part. And I just think, you know, there's a lot of marketers that try to scare people with a lot of these headlines without really, you know, looking at the science and what happens. You know, they take this little dosage. It's like, oh, it's a toxic. But you don't take into account the amount, right? I try to teach people every chemical can be toxic. Everything can be toxic given the dose, the amount. Even water, H2O, can be toxic if you consume too much of it, excessive amounts. And it's actually happened in endurance events. So just because someone says something's toxic, that doesn't mean anything unless you actually know the dosage that makes it toxic. And our food supply is super, super, super safe. So I wouldn't worry about that either. I would just say eat high quality sources of protein, get eggs, get milk, right? But you want to avoid the unpasteurized because the pasteurization process kills a lot of the bugs. So you do want to avoid that in pregnancy because that can make you sick.
Okay. So how about the grass-fed versus free-range products? Is there any difference or benefit?
I've read that free-range and grass-fed have higher amounts of certain things like vitamin A and vitamin E and maybe better quality fat. So I've read that. So I think if you want to mix that in, go ahead and mix it in. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Let's kind of continue on with more nutritional stuff. We've kind of just piggybacked one after the next, and let's kind of get into fish, which is a very hot topic for pregnant women, right? We're going to need fish oils, but we're the mercury and the different levels. So, you know, fish is extremely important not only for our own brain, heart, skin, everything, but the fetus's brain development as well. You know,
right.
I do know that probably the top two things that a doctor is going to recommend for you is a prenatal and a fish oil.
I don't want to leave it up to chance.
Yeah, right. Are the fish oil pills proven to be as effective as actually eating fish?
Yeah, so I wanted to make sure that I had an evidence-based answer to this, so I dug into the research a little bit. I got on PubMed and searched for some research, and I came across a systematic review. And so just real quick to teach you about evidence, a systematic review and a meta-analysis, they're considered the highest quality of evidence because what it does is combine multiple controlled trials and then pulls the data and analyze it. So it's considered really the highest quality evidence that you can get out there, as opposed to a book written by a medical doctor.
Okay.
Not to say all of them are bad, but if someone's opinion about something without backing it up with some science is considered lower quality. Okay, so just with that said, and again, 70 randomized controlled trials, almost 20,000 women who were at low, moderate, and high risk of poor pregnancy outcomes. And so here's what this systematic review, this high quality piece of research showed, that they compared omega-3 intake from food and supplements to a placebo or no omega-3 intake. And the women who got enough omega-3s or some omega-3s from food and or supplements, they had reduced risk of preterm birth, reduced risk of early term birth, and a reduced risk of low birth weight babies. So it seems based on the studies that as long as you're getting some omega-3s, whether it's food or fish, that you're going to have some benefits from getting sufficient quantities. So I would not avoid omega-3 supplements if you're not eating fish, right? Great. It raises your body's total intake levels of those really important essential fats.
Oh, awesome. Well, that's great. And so is there a difference? We've got cod, we've got,
Yeah,
salmon, so is
right.
there a certain, guidance you can give for what products we should be intaking?
So you want the marine sources of the omega-3s, right? There's an omega-3 fat that you get from plants, but that's not the same as the omega-3s in fish and seafood. So those are the ones that are critical to fetal development, brain health, etc. So the ones you'll find in supplements are you want to make sure that they're the fish oils, the marine, the DHA and EPA, right? Whether it's from fish or from krill oil. Now, krill are those little, those little, things that basically fish eat.
Yeah.
You know what
It
krill
looks like
are? Those,
what the
like
the
those,
whales eat them.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly, yes. So sometimes people will make those into supplements, but they tend to be more expensive without any extra benefit to it. Okay. So make sure that it's the marine sources. And again, you can get that in salmon, you get that in, Atlantic mackerel, all kinds. We use Alaska pollock is where we source the fish oils from.
great.
Yeah.
So, and in regards to mercury levels, like we want to make sure there's none. There's
Yeah.
like absolute zero.
You definitely want to minimize. And so I'm going to send you this chart of best choices, good choices, and choices to avoid, and maybe we can include it as a download or maybe a link to it for everybody to look at.
Absolutely.
But yeah, you want to avoid. And so the fishes that are high in mercury, you want to just avoid, right? And those tend to be the deep water fish, the shark, swordfish, tilefish, marlin, even orange roughy, king mackerel, okay. Right? Those are the ones you want to limit, right? Big eye tuna is on this list. So you want swordfish, tilefish, anything like that, you want to just
X-nay.
Yeah. Yeah, because too much mercury, again, going back to dosage, too much mercury in our system is toxic and can be toxic to the baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay, I'll go on to next questions, which let's get into kind of food. Is there anything I should work on incorporating into my diet, or should I avoid anything? Any recommended macro, kind of ratios while leading up to and or getting pregnant?
Yeah, so there are some macro guidelines out there, that are very general, but as you know, I like to take a, sort of an individualized approach. So let's start with protein. You're going to need more protein. So the RDA, recommended dietary allowance is set at 0.8. Pregnant women need more up like 1.2 grams per kilogram, by the way. So that translates to right around, 0.6 gram per pound around.
Okay.
0.7 if you're exercising. Of course, exercisers need more per pound. So you do want to eat more protein. And then you want your carbohydrates to come from, like we said earlier, vegetables, fruit, whole grains, lentils, beans, things, the whole foods, the minimally processed foods. So what's the percentage? It can be around, it depends. It's wide. It can be 40, it can be 50. The more active you are, you need more, right? Yeah. And how do you know what's the right amount? Well, you sort of, your weight, you have to sort of watch your weight. Your doctor's going to monitor your weight over time. And then for fat, you want to eat, the macros around 20%, 35% of your intake from fat. Mm-hmm. So I would start with get your protein needs met, make sure you're eating a lot of healthy carbs, and make sure that your fat sources are healthy too, right? Avocado, the extra virgin olive oil, the nuts, the seeds, the nut butters. And then you want to limit the other stuff, whether it's the refined oils or butter, lard, etc. Just, just don't want excessive amounts. Not to say you can't eat butter, but just you don't want it on everything, right?
Yeah. You might at some point during your pregnancy, but you should not.
No, you can. You want what? Like have butter?
Yeah. Somebody might have a butter fetish out there, and like pickles and peanut butter or whatever the weirds that I've heard all these cravings.
Yeah, the cravings, the food cravings. Yeah, those can happen. You just don't want, obviously certain things in excessive amounts.
Yeah.
What it does is it weeds out the nutritious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main detriment of it, right?
Well,
You're not getting the other stuff.
yeah, and let me ask you this, because somebody like myself who will be traveling a lot, will be moving around a lot, and I always won't have, good source of, meat available to me,
Yeah.
some nice lean chicken, if I'm on the go, is something like, the Dot Fit protein shakes, okay for me to, continue to drink and take as I go?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So the shakes that we make are derived from dairy. They're derived from milk. So whey is a fraction of milk. Whey happens to be one of the highest quality sources of protein. And so that's what I love about it. It's a convenient on the go thing to get your high quality source of protein. We use whey in our bars as well. I would never say only consume that as your source of protein, because you want to get other things that are healthy as well, right? Like your oily fish to get the omegas and things like that. But it's definitely a good source of protein for sure.
Okay.
And it's one of my go-tos without a doubt. So yeah, perfectly safe. Get it in. It's, it's a high quality source of protein.
Okay, great. Good. Because, I had a little bit of nervousness, just kind of reading some stuff. It's like, okay, get all these foods. And I'm like, I don't know. Like with travel, am I just going to on the airplane, like bust out a, little plastic bag with some chicken in it and start gnawing on that in the airport? I think that might be
exactly.
a little frowned
But you could, I like to pack different, snack sizes of like almonds and different nuts. And then, they have pea protein pods and, different beans that are like rich in protein that are like really easy. So I would go for, like we always say, variety, but definitely a shake is one of the most no-brainer things to do in terms of high quality protein.
Okay, good. Great. My next question is going to be about oils. Are hydrogenated oils dangerous to your health or the health of your baby?
Yes, partially hydrogenated oils, the trans fats. Yeah, those have been banned, I believe. I think they were supposed to be either out of our food supply completely by now, or they're supposed to be by a certain time frame, maybe by sometime this year. But so those are the ones that we're in a lot of processed foods.
Yeah.
And so once again, going back to if you're eating, mostly minimally processed foods, you shouldn't have a problem with getting trans fats in your diet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So another, hot topic on that harmful stuff in pregnancy, non-pregnancy is sugar. Is, my sugar intake, is that harmful to the baby? Are there certain numbers that I should, kind of stay away from or?
Okay, so I'm assuming that we're talking about sugar from like junk food.
Yes.
Because sugar's also present in milk. Sugar's also present in fruit. All carbohydrates break down in the body into sugar. So I'm assuming that this question's about, candy, soda, junk food. Yes?
Yes.
So if you consume excessive amounts of sugar, added sugars, refined sugars, then that can increase, your calorie intake, which can lead to excessive weight gain. It can also affect the baby and increase their risk of, being born at a larger, higher birth weight. So it can have some detrimental effects if you're consuming excessive amounts. So I would say make those occasional treats as opposed to staples of your diet, right?
Yeah.
And go for the Greek yogurts and the berries. Both are full of sugar, but they don't have the same impact as the Frappuccino mocha latte, right?
For
and
sure.
The muffin, which are also filled with sugar, but a different kind of sugar. They act different in the body.
Okay, well, let me piggyback with this question then, because this was a question I had from one of my girlfriends, which was, if I'm healthy, but I have a family history of diabetes, am I at greater risk of developing digestional diabetes? And what can I do to reduce my risk?
Yes, you are. Okay. Part of it is genetic. And I looked at the stats on this. 18% of women have gestational diabetes, and babies have a 6-fold higher increase of developing type 2 diabetes if you have gestational diabetes. So if it's in your family, you do have a higher risk. That doesn't mean you're going to get it, but you do have a higher risk for it. So of course, you can minimize or lower your risk by doing a couple things. Maintaining a healthy body weight,
okay,
right? So, that's typically measured by BMI, although BMI is not accurate for everybody, but so maintain a healthy body weight. You want to stay physically active. What's one of the things that makes your body sensitive to sugar and to insulin is physical activity. So we know you got to stay exercising.
Yeah.
You also want to make sure you control your blood sugar levels at each meals by pairing protein with carbohydrate-rich foods and or fat paired with carbohydrate-rich foods, right? So if you're going to have some carrots or whatever, then you might want to combine that with hummus or with hard-boiled eggs, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're going to have, a shake, which is protein, which is good, then just maybe throw in some greens or have a handful of nuts to go with it for some extra added fat, that type of thing. So that when you combine foods, especially fiber and protein with carbs, it slows down the rate of digestion. And so your blood sugar level rises more slowly, which then allows your body to release insulin more slowly. And of course, that's what gestational diabetes is. It's uncontrolled blood sugar and your body's not responding to insulin. So you want to get your body more sensitive to insulin with a healthy body weight, exercise, and then comparing foods together.
Okay. Well, let's kind of continue with that exercise. As you know, and hopefully everybody who's watching, someone who, like myself, exercises 3 to 5 times a week, pretty avid, can I continue to exercise like that? Is that going to be okay? Should I reel it in? What if, I really start going hard in the paint? Okay, continue.
Yeah, I would say continue, but just common sense wise, not assuming what everybody does for exercise, but you do want to avoid extreme sports, contact sports. You're probably going to want to switch up. So I would say, stay active, but common sense. Let's not, maybe the full body contact activities you might want to minimize.
Gotcha.
And if you're like cycling and doing extreme, stuff like that, then you might want to minimize that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's certain exercises, depending on the trimester, you want to avoid, like a lot of exercises on your back, that, trainers typically can take some continuing education on.
Yeah.
And learn more about.
Like for myself, a lot of strength training. Just continue on as normal. Should I, if my heart rate gets, into what we call, by wearing our my zone, it gets into this red zone where it's like, 90% of our max heart rate. If it gets up there, and doesn't stay up there for,
so the general
minutes on minutes and hours on hours, is that okay to, again, continue? I know that there's a lot of fear out there with some women going, okay, I got pregnant, I should really slow it down, just go on some walks and that's it. Now that would drive me absolutely crazy. So, I want to do the resistance training, but I do want to be mindful of, my heart rate and how long it stays, really, really high.
So the general guideline is if your body's adapted to it prior to pregnancy, you can continue on. Those are the general guidelines. Now, of course, you might refine that with monitoring with your physician, but that's just the general, right? If you're used to training hard, if you're used to running, you can continue doing that at a pace. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you're going to be checking in with your doctor on a regular basis. And so then your doctor will be able to say, maybe we should limit this or limit that, et cetera,
Yeah. Great. Okay. So let's kind of get now into a little bit of the, like I talked about before, kind of the top things that a doctor is going to recommend for you. Right now, I take, the DotFit multivitamin, active multivitamin, twice a day, every day, like religiously. So what's the difference between, the active multivitamin and, maybe the prenatal that the doctor is going to suggest for me? Is there a difference?
There is a difference, yeah. Okay. So what the prenatal is going to do, it's going to increase the nutrients that are required in greater amounts during pregnancy. And so, like, for instance, we know that folic acid, we need more of that during pregnancy because it's involved with DNA synthesis and replication. So you're going to want that to be at, optimal levels. So typically a prenatal vitamin will have, 600 to 800 micrograms, whereas our active has 100 micrograms per tablet and our women's has 400. So, maybe if you're gearing up for pregnancy, then you might want to switch to the women's.
Okay.
just to get more of that folic acid in there. And then the prenatal is also going to have higher amounts of iron, maybe a little bit more zinc. So there are differences. So I would say maybe to be cautious is to take the women's, and then once you find out that you're pregnant, then switch to a prenatal vitamin.
Okay.
And then your doctor will do some additional tests, and they might find out, well, chance you need an extra iron, right?
Yeah.
Or you need an extra vitamin D type of thing. So it's going to depend on what the tests come back as in terms of your nutrient status. But to that point, if you're taking all your vitamins and your vitamin D and you're doing it on a regular basis, then you should be well nourished, right?
Yep.
So
yeah, because I'm definitely, getting that in. It's like I said, the active, I'll get the omegas. I actually take those twice because I don't see any harm by taking them twice a day.
There's some benefit too.
And same thing with the vitamin D. I do take those twice as well because, I know that there's, upper limits, but I'm not taking 4 or 5 of those a day because of, what the active has in it too as well. So, I guess I'm, how devoted I am to, DotFit in the benefits of the multivitamin. So I think my fear was, gosh, if I get off this and I don't know what the doctor's going to recommend for me for my prenatal, am I going to be missing out on all these micronutrients that I've had? And again, that's a real fear for me. I'll switch to the women's, no problem. But, in the back of my mind, I'm like, gosh, I'll just take 2 women's every day. And I should be good because I know what's in it. Again, that's a fear. And a lot of women I know, might get recommended by, and every doctor's different, right? That's the other thing is every doctor has, again, just like you talked about, they're going to write a book and that's their maybe opinion on it. But, and every doctor has their own way that they're going to prescribe stuff. So I just don't want to be losing out on all of these little key micronutrients that can help or hurt, my future child.
Yeah, and we'll help you with that, just in terms of looking at the prenatal and seeing, does it have, X amount of iron, X amount of folate, X amount of choline and things, just to make sure those are incorporated into. But yeah, that's a legitimate fear.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, so women's, and then have us check out the prenatal.
Absolutely can do that for sure. Okay. Well, man, I think we've gotten through quite a bit, all of our questions.
We have?
Yeah.
Did we need to talk about what to avoid?
Yeah. Oh, that might have been something that I kind of, that's something I probably mixed that into, one of the questions earlier and that's my fault. So what are some things that, I should, are going to red flag me that I need to be paying attention to, again, in that about 3-month period and during, what are some things?
Yeah. So I think that we already talked about alcohol, so maybe that's why, right?
Yeah.
So of course you would want to minimize that. And then we talked about fish that are high in mercury. Of course, we're going to want to avoid those, swordfish, shark, etc. And then caffeine, there's some guidelines around caffeine, and the guidelines right now sit at 200 milligrams per day. So like a venti coffee is probably going to have more than that, more like 300 to 350 milligrams per day. So if you're like consuming a ton of that, then you might want to, cut back to 1 cup of coffee, as opposed to, a gigantic cup of coffee a couple times a day.
Yeah.
And then, anything that's raw, right now the guidelines are to avoid, raw meats. We talked about unpasteurized milk.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be smart to avoid, it's probably going to be smart to, my desk went down. Soft cheeses, like brie and feta cheese, because there's some risk of, food poisoning there.
Yeah.
And then
I'm a big, sorry to cut you off. I'm a red meat, like my steak is like medium rare.
Yeah.
And
typically it's cooked to a certain temperature. I think it's 165 degrees or something that they're required to cook it to temperature. As long as it's cooked to temperature, that temperature kills off the bacteria.
Okay.
So, that should be fine. But even things like lunch meat, uncooked lunch meat, uncooked processed meat. You're going to want to, the cold meats, just from a risk of food poisoning.
Yeah.
So that's probably, things to keep in mind. And then in general, if I were to say what foods should you add to your diet, make sure you're eating eggs. Like eggs are, it's got a good source of choline. Choline's important to the baby's brain development.
Yeah.
Also, we talked about leafy greens. Leafy greens, most people don't consume enough. Tons of folate, tons of magnesium, tons of fiber, it also has iron. Iron's important because your blood volume is going to expand, right? Because you're going to need all those extra blood vessels to nourish the baby. And then even, meat on the bone, and tough cuts of meat are rich in something called glycine. It's an amino acid that's conditional. You need more of it during pregnancy, and you need it for just normal, skin tissue development as well. So I would say don't avoid, having a rib or, bone broth or a thigh with the bone. Like, just don't be afraid of eating the skin every once in a while. Like, it's okay. Like, some of that stuff has good nutrients.
Two follow-up questions on that then. One, you and I are a little bit similar in regards to our diet soda products. Can I continue to have Diet Coke?
Yeah, so that is also fine. Again, the what they call it, the acceptable daily intake level is enormous. It's like 24 diet sodas or something like that. That's got a built-in safety factor of, I think, 100-fold. So having a diet soda every now and then is fine, as long as anyone out there doesn't have a rare genetic disorder called PKU, which is the inability to break down phenylalanine, or they have to avoid aspartame. You would want to avoid diet soda. So you don't need to add diet soda if you don't drink it, but there's certainly nothing wrong with having one every once in a while,
to fit my needs. Like, I have needs. Yeah. So, and then my second question, which you kind of touched on it with, the bone-in and the amino acid, is, the Amino Boost, which is, again, for me, an essential. It goes right along with, kind of my multivitamin, omegas, and vitamin D. So is that okay to continue to consume as well?
So technically speaking, I need to tell you that from an ethical standpoint, I don't know, because there's no research in pregnant women.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're not going to be like, oh, I'll volunteer.
Right. They're not going to be like, let's test you, But if you think about it, these are free form amino acids. All protein is made up of amino acids.
Yeah.
When your body eats protein, it breaks it all down into these individual amino acids. So technically speaking, there doesn't appear to be any risk, right, from doing that. But I can't back that up with a study to say it's safe.
Of course.
So you're going to have to make your own decision.
Got it. Okay. Some decisions have to be mine. You can't turn to you and .fit for everything. All right. Got it.
Well, we gotta take that stance of we don't know. We really don't know, because there's no research from an ethical standpoint testing aminos in women, pregnant women.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's all the questions. Is there anything that I missed, or anything else you have on your list?
No, but I do have a book recommendation for people out there.
Yes, please.
If you want one. Yeah. So it was written by a dietitian. She's actually specializes in prenatal and pregnancy nutrition, and from an evidence-based standpoint. So she cites everything, right? She's like me. She's got 1,000 research, studies, backing up the recommendations. And I found that, it was really nice to read her work. So it's called Real Food for Pregnancy. And the author's name is Abby Nichols. She's a registered dietitian, putting a lot of good stuff out there. So I would read that. And then for those out there that are worried about gestational diabetes, she also wrote a book on gestational diabetes. So that would be a good resource for you as well, probably right next to What to Expect When You're Expecting, right?
Absolutely. Well, okay, Abby Nichols is the author, you
Nichols.
guys. Abby Nichols
Yep.
has got a couple books out there for us to really delve into. And again, making sure that it is research based, which is
Yes.
fantastic because, there's tons of information out there. And just like with anything, there's good stuff and there's bad stuff. And so we've got
Mhm.
to weed through that and find those little diamonds in the rough and make sure that we can, get the correct information that
Yep.
has the scientific backing behind it. So thank you so much for those two
You're
recommendations.
welcome.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, I'll end everybody, with this, which is we miss you very much. We can't wait to get back into the clubs and see every single person, all of our medical, military, first responders. Thank you so much. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for keeping us safe and putting you guys' own health and safety on the line to protect this country. Thank you so much. You guys, again, we appreciate Kat joining us today and a very special guest, and we'll have her back on real here shortly. I'm sure next week we'll do something else for you guys. We'll get a poll of what you guys want to hear, and we'll make sure that you guys are educated and stay on top of your game. So again, Kat, thank you so much. You guys, we miss you. We love you. Have a great day.